Listening to the Normal Network, where the time is 420, 24/7, 365. Live from Portland, Oregon, it's time for A Different View, a lively women's roundtable discussion on marijuana issues, brought to you in part by the Normal Women's Alliance, with Portland Dispensaries Examiner Jennifer Alexander, Alternative Medical Choices founder Iva Cunningham, and Moms for Marijuana founder Sarah Frank. Now, here's A Different View.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to A Different View. I'm Iva Cunningham. I'm here with Sarah Frank and Jennifer Alexander. Tonight, we've got a great show. We've got Rick Cusick, who's the associate publisher for High Times Magazine. He's just written a book called Parenting and Marijuana. Is that correct?
We don't know exactly what the title is yet.
Well,
it's on marijuana and parenthood.
Okay. Anyway, as we're getting settled in here, Jennifer just rushed in at the last minute like she always does, but that's okay. We're glad you're here in one piece.
I made it.
Yay, we missed you.
We've had some great articles coming out. There's an article about babies testing positive for THC because of different lotions and perfumes and wipes and soaps. Yeah.
I missed that one.
Yeah, that was just out today. Russ wrote about that this morning.
New study out of University of North Carolina.
And then finally, we're going to have the blunt wrap with you. You have some things to talk about, blunt wrap.
Yeah, I was just sitting at home and decided that sounds like a great idea because I like to be brutally honest, too. And
not you.
I figure that'll be the chance to talk about, pot in a brutally honest way. And so today I want to talk a little bit about the DUID arguments going on around the country. I mean, Washington's obviously the most prominent one going on right now, but this is an issue that's coming up everywhere.
This is also in Colorado, and it's also in, there's another state that has that written into their law currently, don't they? Something to the reference to DUID?
Pennsylvania, I think, has a 5 nanogram limit, and there's a couple that have 0, and there's a couple that have 1 or 2, I think. It's happening everywhere.
Pennsylvania used to have a 5. This year they reduced it down to 1.
To 1, yes.
2011.
So, but it's an issue that's coming up nationally. I mean, the national government has been pushing for these DUID laws in dealing with all drugs. So this is...
I think as marijuana consumers, we all know that that's, a bogus number. There's no scientific proof to prove impairment. But I also think that if we don't bring it out to discuss it, we can't really disprove it. It's like science that doesn't exist unless you have,
and that's a little bit of what I want to talk about,
right.
Because there's a lot of things that we haven't looked at yet, and we won't until it's legal.
My thing is, why are we even bothering to do all these drug testing anyway? I mean, I think we just need to do impairment testing. It just makes logical sense to me.
That would be one ideal solution.
Well, it'd be nice. It'd be nice if we were a logical country.
Rational and government? Rational? What did you say?
I'm sorry. I was talking about our government, wasn't I? Free thinkers and all. All right, we're going to take another break, and we'll be right back, and we'll be having a lot of interesting conversations on the show tonight, I'm sure. All right, you're listening to Different View.
In my garden with my peppers and my peas, and I get all the smoke I need for free. 'Cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Growing marijuana in my yard. We keep it where no one can see, so let's keep this between you and me. But I'm growing marijuana in my yard. 'Cause I'm growing marijuana.
Weedmaps.com. I'm Radical Russ from Normal. In my job as outreach coordinator, I travel every month, and when I'm on the road, I need a fast, accurate way to find the medical marijuana dispensaries in the area. So I turn to Weedmaps.com. Weedmaps.com has the best dispensary locator online or on your mobile device. Search by zip code or let Weedmaps find you, and in seconds you'll have the addresses, phone numbers, and customer service reviews for the medical marijuana dispensaries in the local area. Weedmaps.com also has a section devoted to helping you find a doctor who understands and recommends medical marijuana under your state's law. You can even check prices on the Medical Marijuana Stock Exchange. Coming soon, you'll even be able to find the listings of normal attorneys and chapters, local head shops and grow shops, and the best weed-friendly businesses. Weedmaps.com has the information you need to be an informed cannabis consumer. Visit Weedmaps.com today, a proud sponsor of the Normal Network.
Inhaling deeply of the sacred smoke.
country's rave is jive, jive, jive. This modern treat makes life complete. Jive, jive, jive. All the jive is gone. All the jive is gone. I'm sorry, Gate, but you got here late. All the jive is gone. All the jive is gone. All the jive is gone.
All the jive is gone. I love that. I love that music. That's so great. I'm Iva Cunningham, and I'm from Alternative Medical Choices. And every week we gather here on Monday nights to talk about, different issues affecting us in the cannabis movement. All of us bring a different and unique perspective. Sarah's from Moms for Marijuana, and every once in a while we see stories that affect children and families that are more than just a little disturbing. And one that just came out recently, it's on the Normal Stash blog if you ever get a chance to read it. It's called Unexpected Interference of Baby Wash Products with a Cannabinoid THC Immunoassay. And what's...
Drug testing. Pee testing.
And it's interesting.
Of babies?
Yeah, of babies, yes.
Immunoassays, yes.
Yes. Well, anytime an infant is born in the hospital system, they're going to do some sort of drug test.
Right.
And they test the urine, they do PKU tests, they do the blood test.
The meconium.
Yeah, they do all that stuff. And a lot of what happens is if the baby tests positive for something that the mother is either not prescribed or a high level of a certain amount or an illicit or illegal drug, they immediately take the child away. Well, here's a situation where some unexpected mother who, doesn't use cannabis, is washing her child with something that could potentially cause a positive test.
Now, are we talking about like hemp-based products, or are we talking about regular products that somehow are contaminated with?
I'll give you the actual reading of this one. It was testing in the journal Clinical Biochemistry from the University of North Carolina. They had felt that there may have been too many false positives going on. And so what they found is, and this is the quote from the researchers, mixtures of drug-free urine with various commercial products and materials that commonly contact newborns in our nursery were prepared and tested using immunoassay screening methods in our laboratory. And here's the only brand name I could actually find in any of these stories. Addition of head-to-toe baby wash, I guess it's a brand, head-to-toe baby wash to drug-free urine produced a dose-dependent measurable response in the THC immunoassay. Addition of other commercially available baby soaps gave similar results, and subsequent testing indicated specific chemical surfactants that reacted with the THC immunoassay. So what they're saying here is the stuff that they wash babies with, if it comes into contact with the samples, then it could cause a false positive.
It's not actually detecting THC in any of these products.
Right.
It's causing false positives because of a similar
chemical structure. Right. Something in this soap causes the THC part to sound its alarm, even though it's not really THC.
And that's really kind of scary because the implications of a parent whose child tests positive for any drug, but marijuana being one of the most common ones, can have far-reaching implications.
Right.
They could take your
That's
children from you.
Biggest question we get on our website is, what do I do if it's if my baby tests positive? I've been using it for morning sickness, or I've been using it because I hurt, and so we get that question a whole lot, and that's their biggest concern. And what we tell them, is we're not attorneys, but that's probably who you want to talk to. Right. And to have an attorney lined up and even do a temporary guardianship form for when the baby is born, should that happen, then you have something on hand so the baby doesn't go to foster care, it goes to a family member or something else. And, an attorney always can help.
Well, I think it's just, it's another example of the ridiculousness of the drug testing industry. It's
Well, the researchers wanted to point this out as well. They said, quote, "We have identified commonly used soap and wash products used for newborn and infant care as potential causes of false positive THC screening results. Such results in this population can lead to involvement by social services or false child abuse allegations. Given these consequences, it is important for laboratories and providers to be aware of this potential source for false positives and to consider confirmation before initiating interventions." The part that bothers me about that is, they're not saying that the drug testing's bad; it's just not good enough.
Right. And Well, that's just it. The drug testing, if there's that many false positives, what good is it? I mean, what's the point of it if it's not working to even the minimum level that it should be working at?
And there's also the consideration that like Sarah mentions, the mothers who had been using cannabis for sickness or whatever. This is impacting mothers who hadn't used cannabis at all.
Right.
And imagine when they're protesting and saying, "But I've never even seen pot. I've never even smoked pot." Yeah,
sure,
you dirty
sure.
doper. We're gonna take your baby.
Then it'll be like she lied to
I did
authorities.
a quick search of that head to toe baby wash, and all that I got from Google was Johnson & Johnson's head to toe baby wash.
I'm pretty sure.
That's what I thought.
And most babies are given a bath shortly after birth.
Of course.
So.
Well, and another thing that comes up, and it's a little off topic from the false positives raised here, but on topic with the using it for morning sickness and that sort of a thing. A lot of people don't know that if you're pregnant and using cannabis, that it's not the 1 week to 30 days ratio that you're
not at all.
They can actually see what drugs you have used all the way back to about 3 or 4 months into your pregnancy.
Think of
all
it
the way
as a
through.
hair test. It's like the rings on the tree. I'm serious. There's history
They're
there.
not cutting the babies open.
Well, no.
Well, no, it's for those that
counting
don't
your-
know, it's called
just count the
meconium, and
innards.
it's the baby's first poop. But because the baby doesn't excrete
eat
anything
anything.
the whole
Right.
time it's inside your
Yep.
womb, it's retained everything that's gone into its body the whole time.
Exactly.
So they can look way back in your history. So if you were in your first trimester smoking a little bit of marijuana to calm your morning sickness, and then you were like, you know what, this is probably a bad idea, and you stopped the whole time, you can still test positive because they're just not looking back 30 days. They're looking back.
They're looking back all the way.
All the way to the
way. Yeah.
And that's
because if there's any developmental issues, they're going to happen in the first trimester. So they're going to be looking all the way back to see if there was anything there. So if there is a deformity or some sort of physical impairment, they're going to be looking to see what that is. And that also goes into the studies, like for Zoloft or anything like that, because they do prescribe that for mothers.
Right.
They want to see where that's coming from because there's numbers to track there.
And ironically, there's a good point to be made here for midwives and a couple of my friends that have used medical marijuana during their pregnancy and all. They've resorted the midwife route, partly to be out of that invasive hospital environment because they don't tell the mothers they're doing this test.
No, they don't.
They come back to you with CPS later and say, guess what?
Right.
and that's, I mean, that is a little
now,
bit
to
invasive.
be clear, though, you're not a candidate for a midwife or non-dilute if you have a high-risk pregnancy.
True.
It is not a good idea.
And not every baby is tested for drugs, or not every baby is taken away because it tests positive.
Right. That
It's
is
a risk,
true.
though.
But
It's
it
a
is a
risk.
risk.
It's a risk, and that's why it's important to be prepared and do your research and have that research on hand to talk to your doctor if you are talking to your doctor about this
Right.
situation.
True.
Well, yeah, and in all honesty, it's always a little scary to talk to your doctor about these things, but having a doctor that you know that is comfortable with this is a lot more reassuring than not saying anything your
I
whole
think
pregnancy
that's
and then finding
sad
out
that,
later.
that as a young pregnant woman or mother, wouldn't be a man, would it? Although,
Don't we wish that they could do that?
hasn't there been a man that's been pregnant?
I think that was a movie.
Lifetime
No,
movie network.
there was
Anyway.
a woman, a transgender, who went from
that's right,
she
that's
still
right.
had a uterus. Yeah.
Anyway, where was I going?
I have no idea where you were going. No, you were saying
That was not my fault.
that it's a concern that young women dealing with a pregnancy then have to be worried that they can't confide in their doctor.
Right.
That's the person you should
that's
be able to
a very
trust.
critical time, a time that you absolutely want to be honest with your doctor about any behavior, because it is very sensitive process, and anything can throw the whole thing off course.
Right.
Even simple Tylenol or aspirin can have a dramatic effect on a baby's development.
Which is what bothers me, because in the hospitals and stuff, they'll give pregnant women all sorts of kinds of drugs. They'll
Yes,
give
they
them
will.
Demerol and Vicodin and Percocet and Darvocet and
Even
everything I was
after
on
when you're
during my
breastfeeding,
pregnancy.
even after you're breastfeeding, my sister had Demerol after she was.
Well, and the other thing is
But
that
they'll take your baby away from marijuana.
I've always asked my doctors, well, what are you giving me, or what is this, and I'm like really inquisitive about these things. And
As you should be.
and with my second son, they kept stopping my labor because it was happening too early.
Oh, okay.
And they would give me these various muscle relaxers. And they never told me what they were. They kept saying, oh, it's a muscle relaxer. It's fine. And I'm like, well, I need more information than muscle relaxer so that I know what
Cannabis is a muscle relaxer, too. Can I have that?
But you would think that, when you're asking point blank what you're taking, that you would get more information if the medical community at large is so concerned with what is in this baby.
You'd also
birth.
think that, a doctor would give you something that's safe for your baby. And
well, you'd think a
lot
doctor
of times
would be a lot more educated and more concerned for safety overall and would be encouraged if their patient chose to take that as a pain reliever than anything else.
Well, that's what always gets me is that I have, more knowledge on this subject than a doctor does, and I'm not a doctor.
We have an interesting point from Carrie, Cannabis Carrie, in the chat room about a friend talking to a doctor about her marijuana use. It became part of her medical records, and now
it carries with her.
It's carried with her. So.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. While it's unfortunate that you can't always talk to your doctor, on the other hand, I feel like if I went up to my doctor and I was like, you know what, doc, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about medical marijuana without ever saying whether or not I use it. If he's not cool with it, maybe I go find a new doctor.
It's not
now,
that easy.
It's still going to get on your medical record, and I understand that, but I'm saying that if this is something
But here's something that people need to know is that you can have your medical records amended. You can, and people don't know that they can absolutely do that. You can have something added to your records if you addressed it with a doctor and they didn't note it, because that's important for continuing care. Then they could also amend something if they say something like, "That's not what I said to you, and that is not correct, and I want you to amend that."
But on that note, I mean, the most important thing is that you should be able to trust your doctor.
Exactly. You should be able to have an open conversation because cannabis can be contraindicated for some stuff.
Unfortunately,
as far as masking other serious issues, you bet.
Right.
All right, that's the cue. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with this week's Normal Women's Alliance guest, Rick Cusick.
Looking forward to it. Be right back.
In the gate, I don't care. I feel just like I want to clown. Give the beer to play a drink because it's bringing me down. It's got a rhythm, yeah.
Alternative Medical Choices offers healthcare the way it should be. Easy to access, patient-centered, team-based, and quality-focused. We offer a variety of natural, affordable healthcare treatment options like primary care, group acupuncture, massage, and assistance with OMP registration. As a patient, you will have a team of experts working with you to make you the best you can be. Call Alternative Medical Choices at 503-288-5579 or check us out on the web at altmedchoices.com.
My name is Annie. I'm about your daughter's age. I'm happy with my living, earning minimum wage. Last year I had a baby, loved him with all I got. But the bills, they became too much, so I moved a little pot. Now I'm an expatriate in my hometown, and I can't even vote to change the laws that put me down. And I only pray that you fare better. I wear my marijuana leaf like a badge, it's my scarlet letter.
Our next guest on A Different View is brought to you by the Normal Women's Alliance, a nonpartisan coalition of socially and geographically diverse women who believe that marijuana prohibition is a self-destructive and hypocritical policy that undermines the American family. They bring a contemporary approach to the policy debate and are proudly representing the interests of modern mainstream women who believe in legalizing marijuana.
Welcome back to A Different View. Today's Normal Women's Alliance guest is Rick Cusick, associate producer or publisher. I don't know.
You have producers. I have publishers.
Publishers, exactly. Of High Times Magazine. We're so happy to have you on tonight.
I am so happy and honored to be here, and I mean that.
Thank you. And I was unaware that you had a new book. So can you tell me a little bit about it? I was trying to look for it.
Well, no, I've been working on one for quite some time. It's not quite done yet, knock wood, but we're coming into the stretch. And I suppose the reason I'm on the Normal Women's Alliance is because, women have a vested interest in parenting,
Yes.
as we all, but it comes up on the shoulders of women more often than not. And in my experience, I was the associate publisher of High Times. Before that, I was a co-editor. And before that, I was the ad director. The whole time I was kind of raising my daughter by myself. 14 years old at the moment, and I've been at High Times for 14 years. So I tried to write a book about that experience, raising my daughter while being at High Times, and also talk about parenting and marijuana.
So this is kind of a memoir of your experiences with
Well,
your own
it's
daughter?
both memoir and I hope at times a manual, or at least if I can shed some light through the expertise that I've gained at High Times on the subject
Right.
of marijuana and marijuana law reform. And not only that, but I did lots of interviews with a lot of experts that are within our culture, outside of our culture. And the idea is to bring some type of light onto the lifestyle of pot-smoking parents in the United States. You know, a lot of people say if you're a pot-smoking parent, you're a bad parent. Why don't you just stop for your kids' sake, you know?
Right.
And a lot of parents walk around with a lot of guilt going, oh, I got to stop. Oh, I smoked too much.
Or hiding it.
You know, yeah, and well, hiding it. You know, I mean, of course, you don't want to expose your kid to it. That's not the point, because for a lot of reasons, most of which are because it's illegal. But beyond that, I've kind of turned the thing around. A lot of people say, you know, parents I know say, oh, you know, you got to be cool now that you're a parent and stuff. I found marijuana was very, very enhancing to my parenting. I found it helped me be playful when she was very much younger. It helped me be understanding when I needed to be understanding. It helped me be calm when I needed to be calm. And I found it, I endorse it for parents who believe in smoking marijuana. Marijuana is not for everybody.
Rick, I heard a rumor, and
Uh-oh, a rumor?
No, it's okay.
Not true.
Sometimes
Not true.
they're
I
good,
deny it
sometimes
entirely.
They're good.
I do. I deny it entirely. Let's move on.
All right. Okay. Thanks for answering. No, I heard a rumor that you had stopped smoking marijuana.
I had stopped smoking marijuana. 2.5 years. My daughter's 12th birthday. I approached her and I said, so, do I smoke marijuana? And she said, duh. And I said, actually, I don't. Now, you have to, let me presage this. My daughter grew up knowing what I do for a living.
Right.
And I was in a very unique position. I had to come clean. You know, what does your daddy do for a living?
Right.
I had to come clean at a very young age, where most parents would simply be hiding it in their bedroom or something, you know. Although I never, really, got high in front of her or anything like that, I was very, very upfront about what I did for a living and how I felt about it, and what it was, and that it was for recreational use and medical use and enhancement. She knew the whole bit.
Right.
So by the time she got to be 12 years old, I said, do I smoke marijuana? And she said, duh. And I said, actually, I don't. And she said, por qué?
She's a smart 12-year-old.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with her sometimes. So I said, look, I believe in marijuana. It's been a blessing in my life in a lot of ways, but it's a grown-up thing. And there's a lot of things that I don't want you to do, that one day when you're grown up you can make your own decisions. Driving the family car comes to mind. I just don't want you to do that at 12 or 13 or 14.
Right.
Right? But I can keep the car keys away from you. But I can't really stop you from going out on the streets. So long story short, I basically said, as long as you don't smoke marijuana, I won't smoke marijuana.
Oh.
And that went on for about 2.5 years. And she still, I have to be honest, my daughter has not smoked marijuana. About, 6 weeks ago, I did, again, for a little while, because I wanted to experience this new thing called dabs.
Dad will do you
not
in.
the dangerous.
No, I'm sorry, I'm a professional.
It was research, right?
You know what I mean? That's right, I'm writing it off of my taxes.
I got to get that down.
There you go.
Rick, I want
Russ,
to be wearing
call
your
me. I got all
shoes.
kinds of
All right, I'm on it.
I'm telling you, dude.
Tax tips from Rick Cusick. I love it. So you know, and I think
Tax rates from Rick Cusick. Watch out.
I think the interesting thing about that is, you know, is having that open conversation with your kids. Now, I don't have kids, obviously. Russ and I don't have any children, but I don't understand. I mean, I hear parents say that all the time. They don't want to smoke in front of the kids, and I'm coming from a different perspective, and I'm really trying to understand because, you know, when I go camping with my family, I can't smoke in front of, you know, my nieces and nephews. I have to go off in the tent and act like Scourge and be private because it's private.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't just sit out and enjoy myself, but they can sit out around the fire and
drink
get
beer.
blitzed.
Yeah, sure. Right.
I'm not going to share my joint with that kid any more than I'm going to share a drink with that kid.
Right.
And so to me, but I also have had this conversation with, you know, different family members, and they're like, "Oh, we don't want them to see that." I'm like, "Why? Why not you want to see them? Want to show them a different choice, an option that's safer?" But
because
more
they can
than
go
that,
to jail.
well, I understand that, and I understand that. But my thing too is that part of educating starts young,
Right.
And a part of, you know, people are always afraid. Well, you know, I don't want to see us do something bad, and then try to have that conversation. But I also think kids need to see how you handle a specific drug. Mm-hmm. You know how if you drink too much, what's going to happen? If you smoke cannabis, what's going to happen?
I can smoke cigarettes around my son, you know, and he sees that I am addicted to them. I want to quit smoking, but I don't, you know, and I talk to him about addiction, and we teach our children everything. We can teach them to stay out of the beer in the fridge. We can teach them to stay out of the cannabis, too.
Right.
And that's my thought on it.
I have 4 boys myself, and my oldest is almost 17 now. My youngest is about 9. And
Oh, God bless.
yeah,
I say that all the time.
I mean, I haven't broached the hill to say my way works yet, but I like to be really honest with my kids about everything, like how you were saying, you know. I mean, I want them to understand, and it kind of bothers me as a parent to see parents that run away and lock themselves in the bathroom, and they're in there for so long that the kid has to be wondering what's going on in there. And then, you know, the kid's envisioning the worst. Mom's got a crack problem. She goes in the bathroom, you know, doesn't come out for hours at a time.
I'll tell you, it's all conditional. It's all conditional. I live in New Jersey. In New Jersey, they take your kids away for this stuff.
Right.
You know, so, and you putting the burden of that secret of my behavior when she goes off into the school world or into, you know, camp or whatever the thing, and the slip here or there, whatever, is something that I struggle with. You know, I shouldn't put that burden on her. It's an adult problem. It's all conditional. If you live in the wild and woolly Green Triangle, then I don't see anything wrong inherently with smoking marijuana. Of course not.
Right.
Of course not. But being that it's against the law, now that in itself doesn't stop me, but I don't want to put the burden of having to keep the secret. Now, what I did actually was, it came out, and here's what I did. I tried my best not to get high in front of my daughter. There were some times that, you know, I'm sure she saw it somehow or another. But by and large, you know, it certainly was never intentional. And the reason why is I didn't want to put that burden on. On the other hand, I told her up front I smoked marijuana.
Right.
On the other hand, I told her what I do for a living. On the other hand, I told her that I thought the laws were unjust and that you've got to stand up when laws are unjust. If you can put your thumb on one thing in this life and say, this is wrong, and I'm going to do something about it, then you got yourself a good life going.
But I think that you address something, though, I think when we sneak off into the bedroom and we only show one side of it, but like you said, you addressed it. This is my work. This is my passion. This is, you know, this is something I use medicine, recreationally, whatever, you know, and showing all aspects of it and additional to the education. I think that's still a stronger message that we have more control over shaping than if we just run off into the room and expect it to answer the questions when the DARE comes around, or, you know, those programs.
Yeah, no, I mean, my kid was extraordinarily well informed when DARE came around to a scary degree.
I would have
you know,
kept her home that day and said, thanks, she already knows.
Yeah, but again, I had to make her wise as well as smart.
True.
Right.
True.
You know, And the funny thing is 14 now. Now we're getting into my world and her world are colliding. You know, there is definitely kids in her peer group that are smoking marijuana, doing drugs, and dealing drugs.
Right.
I'm aware of it. You know, she doesn't. I'm absolutely certain of that.
You know, it's funny that most of the people that I do know that are involved in activism, their kids don't use drugs.
Yeah. How are they gonna rebel?
Well, I think another point needs to be made is that there's a lot of strong activists that don't use cannabis at all.
Right.
They just
that's true, and that's the ones that are going to push us over the edge.
Right, and they just see the problem with prohibition, and they figured out that hey, their facts make sense.
Yeah, my daughter's one of those.
Yeah.
She's joining the activism group in her school next year. She'll be a sophomore in high school, and she intends that's going to be her cause. So but only because she knows a lot about it. She knows all the people, and Lester Grinspoon's a good family friend, and Keith Strop's a good family friend. She's heard it all.
Right.
And I was busted with Keith in 2007 for smoking a joint in the Boston Freedom Rally. My daughter was there.
I was reading about that today. That was a fascinating court case.
She came up a half hour after they took us away. And then when they let Keith and I go, we went back, and she was there, and I had to go explain to her I was just arrested for smoking marijuana.
Did she roll her eyes? Did she roll her eyes? I love it. Page 1 of Rick Cusick's autobiography. I was arrested with Keith Strop one day.
Yeah, absolutely. I highly recommend it.
All right.
So, if you did it again, would you do it the way you've done it so far? Raising a daughter, would you be as honest? Do you think that was the right way to handle it, or do you think
I'll tell you. I feel much more on solid ground about the way that I've handled the question, the difficult questions, meaning drugs, and now she's getting 14 sex and things like that. These are difficult questions. I feel much better about the way that I've handled those questions because marijuana is kind of like training ground for those questions.
Right.
But at the same time, I can't get her to clean up her room. So I feel like a failure.
That's not going to happen until she
but
moves
not
out
about the
to
drug
bring
question.
somebody over.
Well,
she doesn't smoke pot, but she can't clean up her room. That's the problem.
So your book, Rick, what was the name of it? The one you're writing?
Well, so it was a working title, Reefer Dadness.
Reefer
Dadness. I like that.
Yeah. And, we'll see. Like I said, it's not quite done yet, but we're in the home stretch. And it's going to be as much informative, for things that parents need to know. We all have the same problems, whether we know it or not. We all, when we get divorced and one of us smokes and the other one doesn't, what do you do?
Right.
Yeah.
Right? What do you do when DARE comes around?
Right.
What do you do when you do hide the pot? Do you tell the kid the pot? Do you give them a copy of It's Just a Plant?
Another thing that comes up that's always a little bit interesting is even if you've got it all ironed out with your own child, what happens when the friends come over?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it your place to educate them, or do you all hide it at that point?
To educate or not to educate? Yeah.
Well, I told my daughter really young, I'm going to make you the smartest kid in the schoolyard on this particular subject, but the problem is you can't talk about it.
Right.
And she's honored that. And now as she's gotten older, I'll tell you, marijuana use, in my book I use a lot of the statistics and stuff. And the drugs are, I'll tell you, marijuana use is up. And indeed, daily use of marijuana is up among high schoolers and record level for seniors. But it's actually on monthly use, it's going down and has been for years. They won't tell you that.
Yeah.
And I think that means that kids are making... and by the way, alcohol and tobacco are at record lows as far as teenagers using them.
Nice.
So what that means is that they're getting away from the dangerous things, and they're trying to say that we've gotten everything under control except marijuana. In fact, they're making smarter choices.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you a quick question, Rick.
Go right ahead.
We've got you on for the Normal Women's Alliance, and you've got so much experience, being involved in the movement at large. How do you view the women's role in this, kind of bringing it back around?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Normal Women's Alliance is very important, as is Moms for Marijuana and a number of the other groups I've been aware of as I've kind of taken this active interest in parenting and pot. How I look at it is that you folks have accomplished something. You've taken what is a section of marijuana smoking and brought it to the forefront. And what are the issues, not only that concern all marijuana smokers, but particularly that impact women, I think. Is that correct? Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
It's very much what I'm trying to do with parenting.
Right.
I haven't done it yet, and some people have. Hopefully when the book comes out, it'll come. But there's been people before me, like the Normal Women's Alliance and Moms for Marijuana, who have certainly impacted that question, parenting and such. And so, what we're doing is we're taking. But I don't want to marginalize. I don't want to say women are a small amount of marijuana smokers. Again, these government figures, take them for what they're worth. Mm-hmm. They say that the yearly smokers marijuana, 25 million, around 25, 27 million marijuana smokers every year in the United States, and about 50% are women and 50% are men.
Yeah.
And then when you get into monthly marijuana smokers, it's become something like, 72-28, 72 being men. And when you get to daily marijuana smokers, it gets to something like 80-20. All right, now why is that? Right? Well, the reason is because marijuana is illegal. Mm-hmm. When you stretch it out over a year and everything, it goes out and marginalizes to 50-50 vote. It's illegal, and it's an easy way for young men to prove their outlaw bona fides. You're attracted to it. You're attracted to dealing. Dealers are mostly guys. Guys throughout not California, notwithstanding, because California has it's a different world out there because they've integrated the all types of people into communities out there. That is not true anywhere else except maybe in Colorado.
Well, and I would argue too that women are more likely to say, "Yeah, I've smoked pot before," or "Oh, sometime in the last year, sure I did." No, I haven't smoked any recently.
I did that when I was in high school. I did that. Yeah, that's the other
because we are talking self-reporting studies. I mean, so it's what they're willing to admit to.
Yeah, the male-female thing, I don't have a lot of faith in. I quoted it, but it has been out there for years. You got to start somewhere if we're going to have these conversations. But I don't have a lot of faith in that one because it comes from NIDA. Drug abuse. But the percentages might be more accurate than the numbers. That's
right. I agree. No, I agree that those percentages are probably very accurate for self-reporting, especially. I find that's also true once you get into like daily marijuana smoking. I'm in the business end of High Times, and I see the way products move within our culture and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And you see that the daily marijuana smoker is a guy who wears a pot leaf T-shirt and has the best weed in the world and's got a keef box the size of Oklahoma, and
you've just mentioned everything's on Russ's desk. Seriously, I just
so I guess I'm getting a far field of your original question, but I think that marijuana and is something that it's funny when I think about women, particularly and marijuana, and I've thought about that subject a little bit because I've written about it. I just think that the plant is, in my life has been as much grace as women have been in my life. That's the correlation that I make. And I don't know if that sounds corny or anything like that, but I see them as as a I see them as two very graceful parts of one's life that I associate almost with each other.
Like an enhancement to your life.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. And so. When we talk about empowering women within the marijuana movement, I'm all for it. Sure. And I would. California is kind of a magic land in the way that they've done this. And it's not been perfect out there. That's for sure.
Sure. Well, Rick, if you could give young women who are entering into the marijuana movement as young budding activists, is there an area that we need to be paying attention to that we're not?
Yeah.
Like a part of the conversation we're missing?
Yeah, don't take shit from the men in the movement. That's the first thing. And I mean that.
No, I like that advice.
No, I mean that because marijuana is a very, very broadcast drug. Mm-hmm. A lot of different kind of people smoke it, and so a lot of different type of people are represented within this movement. And you're going to find sexists, you're going to find racists, you're going to find homophobes, and they all love their weed.
Yep.
You know, and remember that, you know. And on top of that, I think that a woman should be self-defining. I have no idea what your most important issues would be. I probably have an inkling, or I think I have an inkling, but you should probably educate me.
Yeah.
And that's definitely what I think, you know, organizations like you, and that they have educated me, the individuals that I've known in these organizations.
So one more question for you, and then I think we're going to need to wrap up. Are you planning on carrying out the book through your daughter's 18th, 21st birthday, or are you planning on wrapping up soon?
Well, yeah. Here's the thing. It's pretty funny. I'm living that set of notes right now. And the book ends on her 12th birthday, and the first one. And as we all know, with my case being the exception, you don't really get to the weed question before 12.
Right.
You know, I did, but out of necessity.
Right.
And as I said, it turned out to be a lot of great practice for a lot of the questions that came up later on, you know, very difficult questions.
Was she been curious about other types of drugs, too? Or just...
yeah, well, the thing is, when I talked about weed to her, I mean, I brought this stuff up because it was either grab the bull by the horns or get rammed by it. And I said to her, you know, there's all different kinds of drugs out there, and as you go along, you're going to see that you get exposed to them. And some people are going to say, oh, well, these are legal, and, you know, that makes them better or easier. And I said, here's the reality about drugs. Hard drugs will kill you. That's like, you'll hear about them, cocaine, heroin. I said like 10 or 11, I had this conversation. I said, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, all that stuff will kill you. And you want to know why? I can give you a list of people I know who are dead. Okay? That's the first thing. Second thing, alcohol, I'm a 27-year recovering alcoholic. And it's deep in my system. It's in my genes. And I told her, you got my genes, so you got to watch out for alcohol because it almost killed me. I said, if you smoke cigarettes, I'll kill you. Okay, so you see, there's death running around all those habits right out there. They'll all kill you one way or the other. Marijuana, I'm a little more philosophical about, but it's not for kids.
Right.
It's I think of it as equivalent to sex and driving the car. Not sex while driving the car, but sex and driving the car. Both are things that you want to eventually have your child, if they so choose, to enjoy them to the fullest.
But at 14, the appropriate
50,
age.
Exactly. You need some experience. You need some judgment. You know, when you know, it's funny. Everybody I know at High Times, I'm an old guy, but everybody's half my age. And when you ask them when they first started smoking weed, they all started smoking weed 13, 14 years old. I started about 16. You know, it was all the following generation was a little younger. And these are people that came to define their life by it, you know, so they started off early. They're all hardworking. They're fine. They're decent human beings. They're creative. They're wonderful people. I love them. If that's true, how come I don't want my daughter to smoke weed at 14? I had to ask myself that question for real. If everybody who I work with and I know within this movement, a lot of them started at a very young age and they're still creative and happy, and well, marijuana is a fairly benign experience in that regard. You know, it doesn't hurt you.
Well, I think that's the big question, Rick. I think that's the big question: is how come I don't want my kids to use it, even though I enjoy it. Rick, we're gonna wrap up this segment, and I want to thank you so much for coming on. You were a joy to talk to and interview. I hope you.
The joy was all mine.
I hope you will come back.
And I do hope that you make a book too that goes from age 12 to 21, and let us know how that goes.
Yeah, I'll come back on and I'll explain where that's going. It's an interesting set of notes, I got to tell you. Totally unlike the first set of notes.
Yes. Exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. We're going to cut to break. You're listening to A Different View. We'll be right back.
Behind me, please don't use any more pepper spray, 'cause that last shot was blinding, I can't see. And it's getting hard to breathe, I'm in custody. Oh, it's only a weed, oh, it's only a weed. Oh, it's only a weed, oh, it's only a weed, it's only a weed. Mom and Dad, it seems I've got a little problem. The policeman thinks I'm dealing and it's prison time.
I'm a lawyer.
I'm a journalist.
I'm a student. I'm a teacher.
I'm a representative.
I have cancer.
The outdated laws of prohibition are more dangerous than the plant itself. I lost my scholarship.
I was fired.
20 million arrests since 1965. This is getting ridiculous.
Our prisons are overcrowded with non-violent offenders.
We have the opportunity to change.
This is costing our country billions of dollars.
Making my family and I fight in a courtroom is difficult enough when I'm already fighting through chemotherapy.
There's no reason to be scared by tradition anymore.
We can stop this. We can stop this.
We are the American people.
We can stop this.
And you have our support.
We are old,
young,
straight,
gay.
We're every race and nationality.
And we're not going to give up.
You can tax it.
You can regulate it.
Apply age restrictions.
You can create millions of new jobs.
We can save our economy.
President Obama?
It's time for legalization.
Legalization.
Yes.
We
can.
Shut your mouth, baby. We can have a lot of fun, yes, a lot of fun, because you're the cutest one. Are you so sweet? Are you so neat? When you're walking down the street, everybody says, baby, you're the cutest one. Are you so heavenly? Oh, don't break for me. Oh, baby, can't you see that I'm in love? Shut your mouth, baby. We can have a lot of fun, yes, a lot of fun, because you're the cutest one.
Welcome back. You're listening to A Different View. I sound so quiet to myself now. I was going to introduce a new segment called The Blunt Wrap, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about the DUID science and the political realities surrounding this. DUID standing for driving under the influence of drugs. And there's a... I think my things are all the way down. There's a study that came out today, and it says marijuana users are, or not today, I'm sorry, it was April 6th, so a few days ago, 3 days ago. It says marijuana users are safer drivers than non-marijuana users. And this is what I want to talk about, because I agree very much with that statement, and for a number of reasons that most marijuana people are familiar with, which is that driving under the influence of cannabis makes you drive a little slower, you're paying a little bit more attention. There's a lot of things about cannabis in general that are going to make you more cautious on the road. and particularly when we're comparing it to alcohol, because alcohol makes you overconfident in your abilities. You feel less impaired than you really are. You're going to be more into taking risks, passing, driving faster, these sorts of things. So when you're comparing it to alcohol, absolutely it's safer. The thing about most of the studies that I think that a lot of people overlook when this conversation comes up, though, is that the studies are looking at people that either A, don't use cannabis very often, or B, don't smoke very much. We don't have very many studies at all that show the guy doing dabs 24 hours a day.
Can I throw in a C?
Yeah.
Some of the studies that are getting the University of Mississippi weed from NIDA are getting the 4% THC.
Very low percentages. Right. And one of the studies that that's been cited recently is the Groten-Herman study. I think Russ had mentioned this to me because I wasn't sure where to find it. It's from September of 2005, and it's developing science-based per se limits for driving under the influence of cannabis. And I got this off of California Normal's website, so they have the full copy for anybody that wants to read it. But one of the things that they point out in this study is that there is this research need to do studies on people with THC concentration ranges between 5 and 15 nanograms per milliliter, which is the high end of, they have done studies of, okay, I smoke a little bit of marijuana now. How am I right now? How am I in half an hour? How am I in an hour or two? They don't do studies of people that maintain those levels for long periods of time. So you're only looking at that acute impairment. We haven't looked at the patients.
Right.
If we did a study of only patients driving, there's other things that go into here, because now you're not talking about a guy who's sitting at home getting baked and going for a drive. You're talking about somebody who's using it as medicine, and there's going to be inherent differences. One of the things that comes up a lot in the various studies with marijuana and driving is the accidents that are seen. Are they seen because those people are just more prone to risky behaviors. Like, for instance, they're the youth that are
there's no,
younger,
like
that
you
are
said-
driving more riskily to begin with. They're already more accident prone.
Right. Well, I think there, you can compare those two demographics, and I think there was one study. Russ, correct me if I'm wrong, where you might be more familiar with the name of it, where they had set up two groups of individuals that none of them had consumed cannabis for X amount of time, and they set them out on a course, and each group, everyone was tested to see how they did. And then half the group was split up. One half of the group smoked a joint apiece, which is, for someone who hasn't smoked in a long time
That's
or
quite a bit,
doesn't smoke,
yeah.
that's a significant
Right.
amount. And then they compared the two groups.
What was the other group?
They
didn't smoke at all.
They didn't smoke at all. So they sent them out on the same course, mind you. And the individuals who did no cannabis did slightly better the second time through the course. However, the cannabis consumers did not do worse, but
Right.
they didn't do better.
Right.
There was no effect, essentially, according to the report. And I think, what you were talking about earlier is that part of it is that we get a little paranoid, we drive a little slower, we know that, we can't go out there just joyriding while high. We don't want to. There's a lot of other repercussions that come with it, and I think that, people tend to think, oh well, I consume cannabis, so therefore I'm gonna, if you consume cannabis, you're going to be impaired. Period.
Right.
Right.
So the one thing that I noticed when I was looking into this that kind of stood out to me as something that I've never really heard talked about before is that the studies look at different things. Not all of them are looking at whole blood. Some of them are looking at what's called blood serum.
Oh, yeah.
And so when they're talking about the nanogram levels, in some of these studies, they're giving them in whole blood, which is what our studies, if you get pulled over here anywhere in the United States, they're almost certainly going to do a whole blood study. The rates are about half as much as the blood serum study. So that's something to be aware of. I'll read a little quote here real quick, and it actually
So the
identifies
serum
it.
tests came out positive more often.
No.
Or
The blood
opposite.
serum is a higher amount. So
Right.
when we're talking about a 5 nanogram per milliliter limit in whole blood, that's the equivalent of a 10 nanogram per
Okay, I see what you're
milliliter
saying. Okay.
blood serum, which is what a lot of the research is talking about. So in one of the studies that was the most comprehensive, it was over 3,000 drivers that had accidents, and they were determining who was at fault. And in this one, it was 3,400 drivers, sorry. And in this one, they said those drivers with the THC concentrations in whole blood of less than 5 nanograms per milliliter, or those with the metabolites but not THC, meaning they had smoked at some point previously but not recently. They didn't have any difference in risk factor for an accident as a sober person. So if you had smoked a long time ago, basically, or not at all, there was no change. But if it was in your blood at levels above the 5 nanogram per milliliter, that the risk factor of an accident was 6.6, and it was equated to a 0.15 blood alcohol level, which is twice the legal limit. And now this doesn't mean that they were impaired necessarily. It means they were more likely to get into an accident. There could be other reasons for that too. It's not necessarily impairment that we're looking at. But the study did show that there was a greater risk of accidents above this level. And so this is where science has come up with this level. And the one thing that comes up that a lot of people say is,
But it was only 6%, right? Is that what she said? 6%?
No, 6 times more likely.
Sorry.
That would be 600%. Well, 660%.
600%
more
likely to have
get
an accident above that limit. Okay.
Right. And now you're only looking at after the fact. You're not looking at the accidents themselves to see what really caused it. I mean, so this is the only way we can look at it right now, though, because you don't know who's smoking cannabis.
Right.
And so we can't say, well, there was 500 people on the road that were smoking cannabis that didn't get into an accident, because they're not going to tell you that. We don't have that. What we need to be looking at, though, is that category. So right now we know that above 5 nanograms per milliliter, they're more likely to have an accident. Okay. We need to determine if that is caused by impairment. The problem that I have with the opposition to this is that our science has shown us that at this level the risk has gone up. We don't know that it's caused by cannabis.
Right. We don't know exclusively by cannabis,
but we need to look at it before we go jumping off that bridge.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, we've said that for a while.
We don't want to presume that these people are safe when so far we're not seeing that. But it could just be that these are younger drivers because the younger people are more likely to smoke pot.
Right.
They're inexperienced, so they're more likely to have there could be
well, and if
confounding
there's
reasons
younger,
for this.
are they more experimental? I mean, are if they're patients, are they mixing OxyContin? Or
Right.
Yeah, have they
stronger?
used something else like alcohol?
Right, and there's so many
exactly.
factors there
So,
that we need to look at for sure. But we need the science behind that, and we're never going to get the science behind that until we have a legal situation.
Yeah, we can't set a precedent.
Then we
without the
can do those
opportunity.
controlled studies and get a couple of people baked out of their minds and go driving, and actually have controlled studies on these things. The other thing I wanted to point out is, like we were talking about earlier, of all of the states that have addressed this question, whether or not they've had medical marijuana, none of them are above 5 nanograms. And the only one that was 5 nanograms, Pennsylvania, reduced it to 1 nanogram per milliliter in the last year. So the highest one then is Nevada, which is 2 nanograms per milliliter. So 5 is high for our current environment. And
I see what you're saying.
from our perspective, it might be ideal for it to be better. But again, we're looking at whole blood. So we're actually looking at a 10 nanogram per milliliter blood serum, which is what most of the research is. And I haven't found anything that hasn't found that same correlation above that level. The problem is that there's always such a small number of people above that level in any data looked at that it's hard to say if that is what's the reason.
Right. So the group is not large enough
For it to be controlled. Right. Most people fall into that below 5 nanograms.
Right.
And below that, we've well proven that it's typically
Safe.
unimpairing. That,
Right.
that your risk is at least as low, that if you are impaired, that you're not impaired in such a way that's leading to this as a statistical rule. Now, that's not to say that there isn't that one guy out there that gets totally baked off of one hit off a joint and is impaired.
Well,
but statistically, he doesn't
right.
exist.
Right. Unless he goes to Hunter Thompson's house.
I think that we really need to just look at the studies of this more, and we won't get those studies until we have a legal market. And that's where I go back to the Washington case. It's not that I am in favor of this DUID provision, but I've got to say that we'll never get the science that we need to prove what everybody else wants until we have this legal situation. And then we can fight for it as ferociously as we fought to end prohibition.
Legal, then we can actually disprove it.
Right.
You know, once it's legal, then we can disprove it. Does it suck? Yeah. Does it, do we all agree that it's not valid science? Yeah. But we have to
all the science we've got until we can do real science.
We've got to we got to have the right to disprove it. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what we have to do. We have to have the right to study it so we can disprove it.
Well, and that's because although it's inconclusive, and that Herman says it, that it is inconclusive, that it's strongly suggesting this. So we need to erase that. We need to say, okay, this was incorrect. That
We
there
also
wasn't
need to be
this
willing to
association.
accept challenges to our own understanding too, and we may be able to find something out. And through that, there's always an opportunity for education. Do I believe that the results are going to prove impairment over a certain amount? Not really.
In most cases, I would say no. But the one thing, we're going to have to wrap up really quick, but the one thing that I have recently been thinking more and more about is with a legal environment, we're going to have more people doing more concentrated forms, and we're going to have more people in that higher market that we're not actually looking at right now.
That's true, dabs.
So it's going to change the demographic. And so we need to be looking a little closer at that. Right now, we're not seeing a lot of people in that demographic.
True, because not everybody has access to that.
Right. So anyway, we need to wrap up the show, and so you're listening to A Different View. We have our replays at Tuesdays at 2 a.m., Friday at 8 a.m., Wednesday at 2 p.m., and Saturday at 4 p.m., I think. Is that right, Russ? Not sure. That's what I last saw, so I think that's what it is. And then our Facebook page is A Different View 420, and our webpage
is a differentview.us. Correct?
And Twitter is at a different, or ADV 420.
ADV
420.
That's our Twitter handle. Our Twitter handle. Do we have it? Is it a handle? I don't know.
Sure, that works. Russ is saying yes. Russ is Twitter God, so it must be yes. So thank you for listening. We'll see you back here next Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific.
All right. Thank you to Kendra for giving us a great guest this week.
Absolutely.
All right. Take care, folks.
Have a good night.
I didn't think with all my life
missing bike I would be gaining. I saw a hobo riding by on one familiar looking Schwinn. Oh, what a lovely bike, said I. That's when I noticed it was Stevens, and I chased after that hobo, shouting, halting words with gusto. I politely asked him where he got that bastard bike. He responded curtly with a right hook to my left eye. Here I found your stupid bike.
You're listening to the Normal Network.